So Workers' Union Numsa is calling on the CEO of Comair to resign with immediate effect. And that's after the South African Civil Aviation Authority indefinitely suspended Comair's operations due to safety concerns. For more on what they're calling for, let's bring in Numsa spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, who's with us via our video link. Always great to see you, Phakamile. Thanks very much indeed for making time. We'll speak about your call in just a moment, but first, as a start, let me get your reaction to the reasons why Comair's operations are actually being grounded.
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to your viewers, and thank you for having us on the show. It's very shocking for us as a union to even have to, the fact that we even have to have this conversation over the fact that an airline has been grounded because of safety concerns, particularly because this is an airline that, and as you know, it's not the only airline. All airlines across the country have gone through a very difficult time because of the lockdowns and the travel bans. We really, sacrifices have been made for Comair to sort of return to the skies, and it's very painful to have gotten that announcement through the statement from the Civil Aviation Authority yesterday, that even after the meeting with the management of Comair, they still are not confident enough to allow the airline to return to the skies, and the suspension of the certificate is indefinite. Very, very worrying for us indeed.
Yeah. What kind of conversations, if any, were taking place between management and workers in the lead up to this moment? Because according to the Aviation Authority, this has actually been a long time coming. There's been multiple incidents at various points that led to this kind of suspension.
Well, one of the things that we've pointed out very sharply when the announcement was made yesterday is that the drastic cost-cutting measures that Comair embarked on have really had a very negative impact on the airline, to the extent where they are even compromising safety. One of the things we've raised, our members have complained about, is the fact that we do not believe that the planes are getting enough ground time for maintenance. And this is part of the radical cost cutting that this company has embarked on. But besides that, we are seeing clear evidence of failure of leadership on the side of the CEO, Glenn Orsmond, because first of all, this is a company that's been under business rescue for 2 years, and it's still under business rescue. Now, it is unheard of, besides the disastrous SAA example, of a company going on for business rescue for this long. The Companies Act did not foresee such a scenario. And yet, Comair management and its executive, and particularly the CEO, are absolutely refusing to account for this absolute failure. Because what that shows us is that there's no clear direction. There does not seem to be an appetite to actually get this airline into a state where it can be run and the management can take over, and it's no longer under the guidance, so to speak, of business rescue practitioners. But also thirdly and very importantly, workers have made major sacrifices in the name of turning around Comair. Their salaries, at some point, they went for many months without even getting paid. And then for months after that, they were earning only 70%, whilst at the same time, benefits and conditions have been slashed, whilst at the same time, dozens of jobs have been lost through multiple retrenchment processes. And yet this company has no problem with dishing out $1 million a month to these business rescue practitioners. And what this says to us is that clearly the strategies that have been implemented where your dependence is on very, very severe cost cutting has gotten so bad that it's even having an impact on safety. And to us, that is a complete failure in the leadership. Glenn Orsmond must resign, because clearly his plan is not working. This airline, they need to get themselves somebody who's going to be in leadership, who has a very clear strategy about how to get this airline back in the black, number one, but also, and very importantly, to ensure that this airline safety record is restored for the sake of workers and the public at large.
Yeah. What do you say to the skeptics among us who say that, removing the CEO of an establishment like Comair doesn't actually really solve the structural problems that you've outlined? Because the sense I'm getting from you is that, outside of there being perhaps a leadership vacuum, as you put it, the issues are actually deeply, deeply entrenched. And we've seen in the past, for instance, how changing CEOs at companies like Eskom doesn't necessarily mean you've solved the problem.
But that's not a fair statement to make. Why should certain people be allowed to get away without accounting? I mean, could you imagine if these safety errors were as a result of a worker or workers being negligent? The public would be baying for the blood, so to speak, of those workers, as would be the company. This man has been appointed to turn this entity around, but not just to turn it around, to ensure and to guarantee the safety of passengers and workers. He is failing in this mandate, and it's not a small failure that we're talking about here. If you read the statement, I was watching the press conference where Ms. Gwebu of the CAA says that in the 30 years that they have played the role of regulator, they've never had an incident where, a fatal incident, thank God, in terms of, where planes have crashed because of mechanical failure. But these incidents at Comair have scared them so much that they've had to take this drastic measure. Now, if we are not going to take a moment and recognize that in the leadership there is very clearly a glaring failure, and the only way to rectify it is to bring in the right person with the right solutions and the right vision, then I don't actually understand how we can expect any kind of meaningful change to happen at Comair right now.
Yeah, in fact, that statement from the Aviation Authority say that they found 3 level 1 findings, and that essentially means there's an immediate risk to the safety and security of those involved, and the airlines must be closed with immediate effect. What kind of concerns, if any, do you have about the ripple effects that this will have on the workers that you represent? We've seen the script unfold before, haven't we? An airline goes through a crisis. What might emerge is them saying that they don't have the money to do what needs to be done to stay in the skies, and inevitably that leads to job losses.
That is one of our biggest worries. As we speak now, members have already been served with the Section 189 notice at Comair. This was before the CAA even made these announcements. And it's quite concerning for us because we cannot, in this South African situation, have any more job losses or any more company closures. We just can't afford it. And workers at Comair have done what they need to do. They've made the sacrifices to make this airline viable. Now what we need to see happen is genuine action in the side of management or the board to demonstrate that these sacrifices have been worthwhile. If workers must suffer as they have suffered in terms of, having gone without full packages, etc., then we have to see some real changes here when it comes to safety. That issue is extremely concerning that they found those 3 level 1 failures because if you recall and if you read some of the media reports about these incidents, they talk, for example, about things like failure of the landing gear to eject or to work properly, engine failure mid-air. I mean, that is a potential catastrophic disaster. So whilst it's not ideal at all that the CAA has taken this decision of grounding the airline, it obviously does put the future of the airline in question. You cannot put a price on the life of a human being. And this issue of safety must be properly tackled and must be tackled very, very quickly for the sake of the airline and for workers as well.
Without a doubt, and we know in aviation your reputation is probably your currency, and one can only wonder the kind of knock that Comair's image is going to take after this. Quickly, Phakamile, with the suspension in place, are workers still expected to be at their posts? What do you know about at least the daily operations while we wait for Comair to sort these things out?
So the planes are grounded, but obviously there is still work to do in terms of customer services. I'm sure you've seen, in fact, I've seen your journalists at the airport assisting members of the public with queries around this issue. So there is some work that's being done. And in fact, one of the things that members are planning to do as of tomorrow is they are planning a picket to emphasize the call for the removal of the CEO. Workers are very worried about the future of the airline. They want a viable working Comair, but they're not comfortable with Glenn Orsmond continuing in his role because thus far his decisions have resulted in an overworked exhausted staffing complement, at the same time which was work on an airline which already now has questionable safety records because of all the massive cost cutting that has taken place. So this is a really serious issue for our members. We will be updating the media about our activities tomorrow, but there is a picket by workers at Comair planned on Tuesday to demand the removal of Glenn Orsmond.
Phakamile Hlubi-Majola speaks for Workers' Union Numsa. Phakamile, always great speaking to you. Thanks so much for your time.